In January 1987, Oral Roberts delivered a shocking message to his followers. God was going to take his life unless they sent $8 million within 3 months. He secluded himself in a 200-foot prayer tower and waited. Some viewed it as faith. Others saw it as blackmail. By the end of March, over $9 million flooded in. But that was merely the beginning. Behind the scenes, his empire was concealing secrets that wouldn't surface for decades. And when they finally emerged, the scandal reached places no one anticipated. The story of what truly happened goes far deeper than a man requesting money. Granville Oral Roberts came into the world on January 24, 1918, in a dirt floor house tucked deep in Pontotoc County, Oklahoma. The home was small, only 2 rooms with a lean-to attached, and every part of it showed how difficult life was for the Roberts family. He was the 5th child in a growing line of 7, and their poverty ran so deep that Oral later said even the poor folks called them poor. His father, Ellis Roberts, preached in the Pentecostal holiness tradition and had spent years building 12 churches, yet he earned almost nothing from his work. Long before Oral was born, Ellis sold his farmland right before oil was discovered there, and the new owners became wealthy, while the Roberts family sank even further into struggle. The family never owned a home or car. They lived from one church meeting to the next, holding on to faith while the world around them stayed rough. People in the church even prayed out loud that God would keep Reverend Roberts humble and that they would keep him poor. The weight of that life shaped Oral from the moment he could understand anything. He watched his father walk 14 long miles each way in heavy winter just to preach at a church and save a few coins of bus fare. That kind of grit settled into him early. Life grew heavier when he was 6. On his first day of school, he tried to say his own name, and the words refused to come out. A painful stutter locked his voice in place, and children mocked him before he even learned how to defend himself. Only his older brother Vaden stood close enough to shield him. The stuttering dug into him and stayed there, shaping how he saw himself and how he moved through the quiet corners of childhood. Every sentence became a mountain, every conversation a trap, and slowly he pulled away from others and lived inside a silence that felt too tight for a boy his age. Then came 1935. Oral was 17 and playing center in a high school basketball tournament in Atoka, Oklahoma when his body gave out. He collapsed without warning and blood filled his lungs. His family rushed him back to their home in Stratford, and the diagnosis arrived with a cold certainty. Tuberculosis had torn through him. Over the next 163 days he stayed in bed and wasted down to 120 pounds while he coughed through long nights that felt endless. Medicine had no cure, and doctors knew it. In those years, tuberculosis stole thousands of lives across the country, and his family braced themselves for the same outcome. They prepared for his funeral because there was nothing else to do. They waited while time slipped through their hands. Yet in the middle of that darkness, his sister Jewel said she had heard God speak. She told Oral that God was going to heal him. Those words lit a spark that felt impossible, but still real enough to hold on to. His father prayed through the night beside his bed, and Oral gave his life back to Christ while his body still trembled with weakness. Then in July 1935, a traveling evangelist named George Monsey pitched a tent in Ada for revival meetings. Oral's brother borrowed a car, lifted the frail boy into the back seat, and took him on a ride that would decide everything. As the car rolled toward Ada that night, Oral felt something unexpected rise inside him. He believed God spoke directly to him in that back seat, telling him that healing would come and that he would one day carry the message to nations. When they reached the tent, he was too weak to stand. His parents held him upright as George Monsey laid hands on him at 11 o'clock at night. The moment prayer began, Oral felt a surge of power rush through him like a current. His lungs tingled. He saw a bright light above him. Then he ran across the stage shouting that he was healed. The tuberculosis vanished along with the stutter that had chased him for years. When he returned to Sug Clinic, doctors examined him again and found no sign of tuberculosis anywhere. The miracle reshaped his body and his life within weeks as he gained weight, regained strength, and stepped into a calling he could now feel clearly. Soon after his recovery, he began traveling with his father, preaching without fear for the first time. His voice lifted freely because the stutter that once held him down had disappeared. By age 18, he received his minister's license in the Pentecostal Holiness Church. Within just a few years, he documented hundreds of salvations and many people who said they experienced spiritual breakthroughs during his meetings. This early momentum carried him forward as he learned the rhythm of ministry and felt the pull towards something larger. On December 24, 1938, Oral married Evelyn Lutman Fanistock, a schoolteacher raised in a minister's home. People later joked that during their fishing trip near the Gulf they caught only each other. Their marriage lasted 66 years and produced 4 children, grounding Oral's life with a steady partnership that endured through every high and low ahead. From 1936 to 1947, he spent 12 years pastoring small churches across the South. Each move brought a new set of challenges, yet he kept trying to grow. He studied part-time at multiple colleges while preaching full-time because he wanted to understand Scripture deeper, even though he never completed a degree. Through every setback, he felt a gentle but steady pressure pulling him toward healing ministry. He wanted to reach people beyond any single church. In June 1947, he stepped out fully. He resigned from his church and entered a season of fasting and prayer that lasted 30 days. During that time, he read the 4 Gospels and the book of Acts 3 times while on his knees. He believed God showed him Jesus in a way he had never understood before. Then he held a local healing service, and when a woman was healed that night, his direction became clear. He established the Oral Roberts Evangelistic Association later that year and began publishing a monthly magazine called Healing Waters to share testimonies and invite people to his meetings. By 1948, he felt led to reach larger cities, so he bought a tent that seated 2,000 people. Within a short time, the crowds grew so large he had to replace it with a 7,500-seat tent, then again with a 12,500-seat tent that became the largest portable tent used for gospel work in the country. Reports of miracles spread everywhere. Stories filled newspapers of people claiming to walk again, see again, or feel pain lift in a moment. In South Carolina, one campaign recorded 13,500 altar calls, and by 1952, more than 1,500,000 people attended his tent meetings. Critics questioned every claim, yet thousands kept coming. To sustain this movement, he created a partner system that changed religious fundraising forever. Viewers became monthly supporters who received magazines like Abundant Life or Contact Point. His offices answered more than 10,000 letters every day, many containing personal prayer requests. Hundreds of staff members handled replies, each letter shaped to sound as if Roberts himself had written it. The system produced stable income that supported every part of his growing work and drew many supporters from poor communities who connected deeply with his message of giving. By 1973, he had 2.5 million partners. His ministry grew into an empire valued at more than $500 million with a university, a hospital, a medical school, and a campus in Tulsa that stretched across 50 acres. By the early 1980s, his budget reached $125 million a year, and he employed more than 2,000 people. Programs aired on hundreds of stations, and primetime specials reached millions of viewers. In the early 1960s, Oral Roberts stood on open Oklahoma land and imagined a whole new kind of campus. Ground was broken for Oral Roberts University in 1962 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in 1963, the state granted its charter. By 1965, the university finally opened its doors. Exactly 300 students walked onto a futuristic campus that spread across 500 acres, with 7 main buildings already finished. The architecture looked like something from the future, with sharp angles and bright surfaces that seemed to reach toward the sky. At the center rose the 200-foot prayer tower, a glass and steel structure designed by Tulsa architect Frank Wallace. Its bold religious focus made academic leaders nervous. Roberts pushed ahead, spent about $2 million to finish the tower in 1967, then called the people to 3 days of prayer and fasting. Under the shine, money trouble was already growing. By the late 1960s, Roberts's ministry was slipping toward financial disaster. Donations had fallen after he joined the United Methodist Church and stepped away from his television program and big crusades. Things got so bad that he decided to sell the ministry's corporate airplane just to raise cash. That is when James Eugene Ewing, a former tent revivalist, walked in to buy the plane and ended up selling something far more valuable. Sitting with Roberts, he said bluntly, "Oral, you are in trouble, and I can help you." His plan was simple and clever. Send letters to everyone on the mailing list. Ask them to send their personal prayer requests. promised that Roberts would carry those requests into the prayer tower, pray over them, and then mail back a personal response. When the letters went out, thousands of envelopes came back. People poured out their fears and hopes on paper, and tucked in donations along with their prayers. Out of that moment, a new idea hardened into doctrine. If you gave money to the ministry, God would bless you in return. Seed faith. Plant your money as a seed, and expect a financial harvest from heaven. The results were staggering. In 1968, the ministry's income sat at about $6 million, a dangerously low figure for an operation that large. After the Prayer Tower campaign, income for 1969 jumped to about $12,300,000. Donations doubled in a single year from this emotional prayer request appeal. Writer Wayne A. Robinson later said that the event rescued the association from bankruptcy. Roberts was so grateful that instead of selling the airplane to Ewing, he gave it to him as a gift. More important than the plane, Roberts now had a template. Whenever a crisis came, he could turn the prayer tower into a spotlight, create an urgent spiritual moment, write to his partners, and ask them to save the vision. In 1977, Roberts said something even more dramatic had happened. He claimed that a 900-foot-tall Jesus appeared to him with a specific command. The Lord, he said, told him to build the City of Faith Medical and Research Center, a place where medicine and prayer would flow together. Roberts imagined a major national and international center where doctors, nurses, and prayer partners would work side by side. Then hard numbers arrived. By 1986, the hospital was bleeding more than $10 million each year. Occupancy never rose much above half capacity. Donations dropped from about $5 million to $2,700,000 over only 2 years. The shining towers that began as a symbol of faith slowly turned into giant, half-empty monuments to financial strain. In the middle of this storm, Roberts reached for the tactic that had saved him before. On January 4, 1987, he sent out one of the most shocking fundraising letters in religious history. In personal mailings, he wrote that God had been speaking to him for many days and that this time it meant life or death. At age 68, he claimed that God had given him an ultimatum. If he did not raise exactly $8 million by March 34th, the Lord would call him home. The money, he said, would pay for medical scholarships at the struggling City of Faith. The backdrop made his words even more intense. Ministry income had already collapsed from about $88 million in 1980 to $55 million by 1986. The hospital was drowning in losses. Now Roberts' own life sat at the center of the pitch. For many, the letter felt like a spiritual ransom note that used his death as the price. Even other televangelists were stunned, and the claim quickly became front-page news across the United States. The drama only grew. On March 24, 1987, Roberts went into the 200-foot prayer tower on the ORU campus and announced that he would stay in and around that tower until victory came or God called him home. He closed it to visitors and entered his private room at the top. From there, he broadcast repeatedly, asking viewers to help save his life and the school. The tower, which had once been a symbol of bold architecture and prayer, now became a stage set for a 10-day vigil. Critics called it spiritual blackmail. His son Richard Roberts added another layer of emotion. Just before Oral's 69th birthday on January 24, 1987, Richard sent out his own letters. "Partner, we cannot let this man of God die," he wrote, explaining that they were still $4,500,000 short of the goal. The birthday became a second countdown inside the first one. Father and son moved in sync, one secluded in the prayer tower, the other pleading that his father's life was on the line. On March 22, 1987, the campaign landed its biggest gift. Jerry Collins, a 79-year-old owner of Greyhound racing tracks in Florida, read reports that Roberts needed $1,300,000 to reach his target. After hearing about Roberts' situation, he wrote a personal check for $1,300,000. He told reporters he did it to keep the man from hastening his journey to heaven. Even with this huge gift, Richard admitted that they were still about $1 million short. Smaller donations from across the country filled the gap. By the time the counting stopped, the total stood at about $9,100,000, well over the requested $8 million. On April 1, 1987, Roberts finally came down from the prayer tower. The date was April Fool's Day, a detail critics found impossible to ignore. In his broadcast, he almost shouted with relief. "It is April, and I am alive," he told viewers. He spoke of the devil trying to pull down his support base and framed the success not as a clever fundraising campaign, but as a spiritual victory over Satan. Then came the twist that left many supporters stunned. Roberts later explained that the $8 million was not just a one-time emergency need. According to him, God wanted that amount every year until Jesus returned. The crisis had not ended. It had simply become an annual requirement. Even with $9,100,000 raised, the City of Faith could not survive. On September 14, 1989, Roberts faced students and reporters and delivered the news that broke his own dream. The hospital would close by the end of December. The medical school at Oral Roberts University would close at the end of the academic year. Around 600 people would lose their jobs. On October 16, 1989, the City of Faith released its last patient. More than 90% of the $150 million complex now stood empty. By 1989, the ministry carried about $25 million in debt. This was the same man who had once ruled a $500 million religious empire. Scandals involving other televangelists such as Jim Bakker and Jimmy Swaggart had eroded public trust. Trouble did not end with the father. By October 2007, the strain finally broke into public view. 3 former professors filed a wrongful termination lawsuit in Tulsa County District Court. They claimed they had been fired because they reported that Richard had asked them to use students and school resources to help a political campaign, which would violate federal nonprofit law. The lawsuit included an internal report that listed more than 40 examples of moral or ethical misconduct. One of the most damaging claims involved the Roberts family home. According to the lawsuit, Richard had used university donor money to remodel his house 11 times in 14 years. This was not a university building. It was the family residence in a gated community. Yet each renovation was charged to the university. Lindsay Roberts, Richard's wife, served on the board of regents. The lawsuit claimed she spent more than $39,000 at a single Chico's clothing store in less than 1 year. She reportedly told staff members, "As long as I wear it once on TV, we can charge it off." In one case, the ORU jet carried Richard's daughter and her friends on a senior trip to Orlando and the Bahamas. The cost came to exactly $29,411, labeled as an evangelistic function of the president. The lawsuit said Lindsay regularly ran up cell phone bills over $800 per month, with many charges from text messages sent between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. to underage males given phones at university expense. Lindsay had 2 luxury vehicles supplied by the university. She drove a white Lexus sport utility vehicle and a red Mercedes convertible. Both had been bought with donor funds while ORU struggled under more than $50 million of debt. Faculty members voted no confidence in Richard's leadership in November 2007. On November 23, 2007, Thanksgiving Day, he resigned as president of ORU. On December 15, 2009, Oral Roberts died at age 91 from complications of pneumonia in Newport Beach, California. It had been 22 years since he told viewers that God would call him home if they did not send $8 million. Now his life ended the ordinary way, in a hospital room under the care of doctors.